So hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening. This is part 2 of our record keeping for production management series, Setting Bulls Up for Success, the Importance of a Bull Soundness Evaluation. I am Sydney Fortier. I am a Research and Innovation Coordinator with the Beef Cattle Research Council, and I will be your moderator this evening. We are very happy to be able to put on these webinars for free through the Knowledge Dissemination and Technology Transfer Project, funded by the Canadian Beef Cattle Checkoff and Canada's Beef Science Cluster. So some housekeeping before we jump in. We ask that you please submit questions throughout the presentation as they come up, and you can do that through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. It looks like that at the bottom there. We will have a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar where these questions will be addressed. We ask that you don't use the chat function to ask any questions, but feel free to converse in there as you wish. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all those who have registered, even those who are unable to attend live. If you are curious about which areas your operation is excelling, which might need some work, or you're interested in record keeping but not sure where to start, or want to take it to the next level, we highly suggest you check out BCRC's record keeping and benchmarking resource. It's broken down into 3 levels of increasing complexity, and it breaks down the what, when, and how of animal health and production, forage and grazing, genetics, and financial record keeping. So whether you are new to record keeping or looking to take it to the next level, there's something there for everyone. And if you find yourself over on our site, you will also be able to check out some of our other tools and resources. This includes our bull valuation calculator, which estimates a break-even bull price using personalized on-farm numbers. So yeah. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers for this evening. We are going to hear from Dr. Roy Lewis. And we previously have scheduled Brian Whitwell. Unfortunately, he is having some issues with a power outage at his farm right now. So he will join us if he is able. But for now, we're just going to continue with our regularly scheduled programming. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and invite Roy to share his while I introduce him. So Dr. Roy Lewis graduated from the Western College of Veterinary Medicine in 1981 and was a partner at the Westlock Veterinary Clinic until December of 2012. He has been a large animal practitioner for 40 plus years, mainly in beef cattle, both commercial and purebred herds, and bison. He had his own bison herd of 70 cows at one time. His interests are preventative medicine, fertility in both bulls and cows, as well as animal welfare. He has written numerous producer articles in magazines such as The Western Producer, Alberta Farmer Express, Grain News, and several cattle breed magazines. In 2012, Roy joined Merck Animal Health as a technical services veterinarian part-time until June of 2022, or 2020 rather. Roy has 2 kids, a daughter, Callie, a vet who graduated in 2015 from the UCVM, and a son, Colton, a medical resident doctor, graduated in 2019 from the University of Alberta. Currently, Roy spends some time examining and lecturing the veterinary students at the University of Calgary. He's also a part of Lewis Farms, a family-owned mixed farming operation which includes 1,000 purebred Simmental and Angus cows, grain, and 500 acres of potatoes near Spruce Grove, Alberta. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Roy.
Well, thanks, Sydney. It's always a little hard to get used to these the webinars when you can't hear the audience's response, but I'm really happy to be here tonight as the invitation from BCRC. Breeding soundness or bull soundness exams are a real kind of passion with me and something I've been doing a lot of in my 40 plus years of practice in veterinary medicine. So in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to hopefully take you through a fair bit of that. I realize the crowd is, the audience is from one end of Canada to the other, probably purebred breeders, commercial breeders, some of which are, I know I'm preaching to the converted as far as having done a lot of bull soundness exams, but I'm hoping to give them some little tips and tricks maybe that might help their operation a little bit. And for somebody new that's going to get into this, realizing that it's maybe not as big a problem to do. Like it's not with handling the bulls and stuff, we can do it fairly safely and decent setups and get some really good results for everybody. So without further ado, I'll get into the presentation here. And your screen sharing, I'm just seeing if it will. Next time, I might have to go up and down. It's my buttons don't seem to be working here, but that's okay. I can get around that. Just a bunch of pictures again showing. I'm not gonna go into any one breed at all. This is sort of all inclusive of over everything. We're gonna talk about the ways we seem and evaluate what we look at, why we hope to breeders out of there for you, and various other things as we go along. Problems that we find that we can correct and still have a bull fertile after, and those types of things. I guess if somebody's thinking of doing a bull soundness exam for the first time, it's always really easy to go back to a slide like this. Bulls are half the genetics of your herd, and by semen evaluating, those bulls, we can kind of really help steer the direction of the reproductive fertility of that herd going forward in the next year by looking at those few bulls. The same equivalent is looking at all the cows, but we're really doing this as a preventative thing. We're doing this ahead of time, ahead of the breeding season. When we find out the open cows and stuff, that's usually after the breeding season. It's kind of too late. And so we can really avoid a lot of issues. We can up the bull to cow ratio in some cases, find out the ones that are really the true breeders in the herd, and eliminate problems, saving you feed costs as well, but also being able to replace that bull, even though he may look healthy and everything looks okay, he's got a problem with fertility in one way, shape, or form. So this is something that the purebred people over the years have really learned. I feel when we go in and test the bulls for them, I think it's a win-win situation. They realize that getting the problem bulls out are good because they're not going to have to sell them and deal with the consequences of that after. And then they're really good for of course, the person purchasing the bulls that knows that these bulls have been checked over, and at least that fertility aspect is totally, sort of looked at and substantiated and made sure that everything's going to be okay going forward. Just wanted to do a quick I just threw this together, so don't hold me on any of these dates, but because I graduated in 1981, I kind of came out when bull evaluations was just kind of in its infancy, but starting to grow. So it was done at the studs. It was done, the AIing had been done since the 50s, so they'd collected semen and all that kind of stuff. The 70s got into the semen evaluators and ejaculators were getting better. Veterinarians were taught about it in veterinary school. The demand was starting to come from the commercial breeders that buy the purebred bulls, kind of saying, geez, can I buy this bull semen tested? Because that would really help me out a lot. And onwards and upwards. And still, and again, the purebred breeders really realized, I think, that this was a good thing to do for themselves and for their purchasers, giving them some confidence. The commercial producers, in my mind, and this is just sort of me talking, followed along. They obviously purchased bulls from the purebred producers, so those came in semen evaluated, and then they started looking at, so any new bulls I get, which were looked after by the purebred producers. But if I had a problem bull, if I had a bull that was, got really lame, got really sick during the year, lost weight, that sort of thing, should probably test him, should probably test some of those bulls that are getting a little bit old, and maybe leave those middle-aged bulls that don't seem to have much problem. Then they started to realize some of them still develop problems. So why not do the whole bull battery while the veterinarian's there, or they're taking them somewhere, get them all done at once, and know that if there is a problem bull, it can be eliminated, or a weak bull, even one that's sort of, lower in fertility, is not sterile or anything, but maybe it should be a spare bull, or thought of being pulled, or maybe we know next year that it's not going to be any good. Community pastures started doing the bulls on entry as they gathered them. It was usually community pasture rule, if you like. And then it just got into the whole bull batteries were done every year. And now it's ramped up even that a lot of commercial producers, if they buy a bull early in a season, he's been semen tested and everything, but maybe they're not, they bought the bull in March, he's put in their bull battery at home, and they are semen testing in May or late April because they're going to breed in May. They'll probably run that bull in and just do them again. It's a group of them. And some things will happen sometimes. I mean, it's pretty rare, but it can happen. And what better way to find out than so over semen evaluating. I'm not trying to promote it being done, but there are times we even run into really top end herds that will share a bull. Again, they're herds where they're known disease status is known between them. And they breed at different seasons in the year. Really good quality bull will be shared. They'll usually semen test them twice. Each one will semen test them before they go into their particular herd to rectify that. So it's become a thing that's fairly normal. I know out west. I know maybe in eastern and maybe Atlantic Canada, maybe not quite so much. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well. They're even getting to the stage now where some of the bull sales and from the purebred guys now, what happens is they're a little too early. The bulls are too young. They're, let's say, a January sale, and they have mainly March calves, that type of thing. Those ones generally will be measured and palpated for internal, if they're secondary reproductive glands are infected or something, just a quick thing to rule all that out. Sold, and then the purebred breeder ensures they'll be okay, and they're semen tested before they're delivered. So another way to do it, it's still getting done, and that's really what counts. And I just wanted to get into facilities a little bit, and maybe a little bit of a history in that too. A lot think that you need some super elaborate thing. I mean, I'm spoiled. I do a lot in hydraulic chutes, and I mean that works just fantastic because we don't need a pole behind the bulls. I mean, there's a lot of things that I really like about them, but a fairly robust chute system or alley system will work pretty well. And when we got going in the mid 80s, when guys were bringing in herd sires, our clinic was not equipped to handle herd sires. We could do yearlings in there pretty good, but not herd sires. So we ended up renting the auction market facility that was cleaned out between sales. So it was between sales. We'd book appointments and have the producers haul the bulls in, and we'd set up appointments, and it was great. I mean, the producers helped each other even, and we just had a kind of stream of bulls coming through. And that's what we did. So and I even had certain individuals that had really good facilities, and then they could, they could, have a neighbor come in and bring in some of their bulls and use their facility, hydraulic chute, maybe tub system, get them in and out, and sort of help the neighbors out. So kind of like a mini auction market, if you will. With a really good producer wanting to help out in that. So that was a good way to get a lot of them done. They work together. We do some out in the cold, but we need the microscope and all that stuff in the warm, but we'll even do that in the truck, and we'll blow heat under the chute. We've done that. It's really nice to have nice warm facilities, but sometimes not everybody can have that, and we can make do and get the job done when it's still kind of winter out, as long as it isn't super cold. I've even done small groups of yearlings where it got super cold. We could not use the guy's chute outside, so we did them in the maternity pen in the barn. Again, a little more work, but you could make it be fairly safe if you knew what you were doing. And a good maternity pen. So different ways. Again, obviously wouldn't do a maternity pen with a 2-year-old bull or a mature bull, but yearlings that you could sort of manhandle a little bit more, that worked fairly well. The one thing I wanted to leave you with too on this is the bull soundness evaluations in my mind are very repeatable. So if veterinarian A has an issue with a bull either going down in a chute or something, urinating, whatever, Usually another one will have that same problem. The problem is usually kind of repeatable from qualified vet to qualified vet. There's some that have a real art to this and are probably a little better for sure, but most of the time it's quite repeatable. If you get a second opinion is my point. And I'd like to say that we're masters at improvisation, and what I mean by that is we're this happened to be a big purebred operator. They've retired now, but they had a really big Angus herd in Alberta. We just done his 130 or 40 yearling bulls. He has a sale kind of used to be about St. Patrick's Day. And this was their big red Angus herd size. He couldn't fit up through the alley system. They got a great alley system, but it was just too small for him. We were going to get him stuck. We couldn't do that. Said, well, what are we going to do? Well, where do you guys load out the cows and bulls or whatever when you're transporting them in your little trailer? Well, they do it here. I said, why don't we just get something to block the front? And they brought this big tractor, put a big bar behind, easily able to get a sample, no muss, no fuss. Everybody's pretty safe. I think the bull's pretty safe as well. And that's why I'm kind of snickering, because I thought this would make a pretty good shot. So again, for the whole reproductive end of things, I just wanted to say we obviously measure the scrotum. You all know about that. I think semen quality, which is what the techs a lot of times help us out with. We're always with this, especially with the yearlings, and what we help out there with is finding problems with the penis. And I'm talking about these persistent frenulums. I've got some pictures to show you, warts. Sometimes they can get cuts that scar up. They can get hair rings. I mean, there's a few different things, not super common, but when we find them, we can usually correct the problem right away. And that bull has a very good chance to go on to be a good breeding bull, where it would have been a problem had it been not found and dealt with at the time. Libido, or that kind of ability to breed, is still kind of a little bit up to the owner. The Australians have got some sort of libido kind of testing things that they've done, but they're kind of cumbersome. And I don't think animal welfare likes them too much. So it's more or less that watching the bull breed when you first get him, to see if he can breed that first one or two, to give you good confidence that his libido, and on a yearling especially, his ability to breed is good. So lots of good things, but that's one we kind of just leave up to the owner a little bit. And usually the ones that are really awkward are found out about, and then we sometimes have to watch them, get a cow in heat, and it doesn't take long to figure out which ones are the super awkward ones. So and this all leads to the bull soundness evaluation, right? The semen evaluation type of thing that we're mainly talking about today. All the breeds have a breed minimum, and to me, having been in the field as long as I've had, I think that breed minimum is bang on the money. I mean, usually, and I've tried a few bulls that are just under breed minimum, and without a doubt, they just about always would fail, where you can't even get a semen sample. I think it's bang on for all the different breeds and the different ages of those breeds. It's been pretty well researched and substantiated over the years, and I really kind of believe in that. And that form, and I'll show you that in a minute, is in the back of the semen evaluation form that you can all have a look at. It's got the different breeds on, and then the different ages and the different minimums, or even what the average is for that age, so you kind of know what's going on as far as comparing them to your bulls. We've improved a lot with the scrotal tapes. I mean, they used to be everything from using old X-ray tape to strings to tape measures to seamstress tapes, which work in a pinch, I guess. But the spring-loaded tapes that are called reliable, and there's a couple of pictures of them, very repeatable between veterinarians, but also producers. And I encourage producers, especially purebred ones, if they want to have a tape around, they can do the measuring, even ahead of time, and weed out the real bad bulls pretty easily, and are very good at that. They're going to be as accurate as I am, and such and such. And the one point there, the 30 to 38 to 39 centimeters, they found that anything above that, really not a lot more in semen production. I always say it's just bragging rights. Everybody wants big scrotums, and I get that. for semen production and fertility and all that sort of thing. But too big, I think we're starting to maybe have some problems when some of these bulls, and I've seen them, they get up into that close to 50 or a little over 50. Those ones do not last. They break down. They get caught on things. There's all kind of things that can go wrong with them. So too big is maybe not good either. So I think, if we can kind of wrap our head around where we're at right now is at a pretty good place, I think, as far as scrotal size in the industry generally, and with all the breeds generally. The US measures differently. So they, if it's a veterinarian, they just lay the tape around and kind of snug it up a little bit. So there's no squeezing or compressing of the scrotal skin. So the bulls down there, the same bulls that I would measure 35, they're probably going to get at 38 or 37, or maybe even 39, but usually that 2 to 3 centimeters. So just keep that in mind, because I know earlier a lot of people went down for genetics they thought would improve their scrotal size. It didn't do anything to it because there was a difference in the way they measure. And again, nothing wrong with what they do. Just keep that in mind, because the U.S. is completely on that system, and Canada is completely on our system that we use. So this slide just quickly to say we can do other. You can do other males and other species. Bison collect just about the same. In fact, in some ways, a little bit easier than beef. The only ones stallions are not do not tolerate a electroejaculator, but billy goats, rams, that sort of thing. So it's a commonly done thing, and there's different sizes probes to accommodate the different type of species. I better move along here, and I may go a little longer. Sydney, just if Brian's going to maybe not be able to show, if that's okay here. This is taking me a little longer than I thought. The components, again, serving capacity, just mentioned that about the libido, not that's kind of up to the producers, but we're trying to do as good a physical kind of soundness exam as we can on these bulls as well. So it's nice to watch them walk and just have a look, and we're under there anyways. Definitely the feet and legs can get looked at. I just threw this picture on. It was an old, I think, European Simmental in the day, but way too straight of legs, like a posty leg type of thing. Something to that degree might be culled out on a semen evaluation by a veterinarian just on sort of confirmation. So there's other things that they'll fail on their physical exam. Otherwise, if it's somewhat subtle, I don't think it's fair to the purebred producer. It's mentioned. Usually the veterinarian is very transparent. Any of these things are on, if they got a slight scar on the eye, that's probably, if they've seen it, they'll probably write that on. If they've got slightly boggy hocks, if they've got this or that, slight subtleties in doesn't mean they're a failure as a breeder. It just means there's a little issue there that they wanted whoever bought the bull to know. That's all. We're trying to be fair and transparent to everybody, and I think that's a really good way to do it. And then motility, or the ability of the sperm to swim. At least the way I do it, the technician that works with me does a lot of that. I'll oversee that. Depends a little on the veterinarian how they rig that up, and some the morphology the technicians do or the veterinarians do, which are the individuals. Getting into my kind of fun slide here. So I say when I go to collect, I said I'm always seem to be down on my knees trying to get the sample. So I'm kind of praying to the semen gods, right? I really I want to do the best for the bull on that day, and I sort of want to make the best decision. So if he's good, I want to make sure that I know he's good, and if he's bad, I really want to make sure he's bad. And if he's sort of in the middle, those are the ones that we get redone. They could be the young bulls that just have a few too many defects, and yet they're still really young, so they'll really come around. But we always want to treat the bulls as good as we can, not get them too stressed out, to give them that extra ability to give us that sample that we know that they hopefully have in them. So my technique is, if I'm using hydraulic chutes like this one is at the clinic, it's a silencer chute that will also tip up. So if we have a bull that even really wants to go down a lot, that happens occasionally, we'll actually tip them and do them on their side. I've done that, but I usually leave them pretty loose in the chute. I find they stand better. Don't even catch their heads unless they're really high strung or something. And just take them nice and slow and steady. And it's good to have good equipment that you can rely on. and you don't have electrical issues and that sort of thing. And you know, again, give the bull every ability to give you a pretty good sample. And you know, I always put this picture in because I think these bulls look like they're happy. They know they're going up to get semen evaluated. Maybe I'm wrong, but it also shows this is happen to be doing some at the farm, but in the you know, it's in the winter. So they're in kind of a bit of a warmed up shed. It would be a little below zero probably where they're going, but going in, collected relatively quickly, and then back out to their pen. So we try to stress them as least as possible, bring them as a group, do them, put them back, so you're not getting a lot of fighting and that sort of thing. So just something to keep in mind. And then when they're going through this with another producer here, just you know, anything else that bulls a little harder to handle in general. So if you get that opportunity to handle them, is there anything you need to do? Is there something you need to vaccinate them for? Do you need to treat them for parasites? Is there a few things that you need to do that you've got the opportunity? You know, and they do have their mind a little bit on me, you know, trying to electro-ejaculate them. So a little easier to, even with this guy is loose in the chute. You know, if you have to needle them or something, they're not going to be moving around too much. So just some things to consider that help. Bulls, I know, take more work to work through, and you know, so take advantage of that and do any other procedures that you need to do on them. Again, the good, just going to move this down here so I can, you know, and the equipment is often super necessary to just be in good shape. These are, and I'm not trying to promote a brand. I've used these pulsators since I think I graduated. I think the one I first used was a 2, and they're up to a 5 now. There's some good brands of different electro. Just find every model that comes out is a little bit smoother or has a little effect, or they don't go down as much. All these different things have is added up here. I just see something flash that my internet connection is unstable, Sydney. So hopefully it'll hang in there. Anyway, the US vets, again, I mentioned that already about the measuring scrotals, and they will also adjust the scrotals to a year. We don't do that in Canada typically. They may in the EPD end of things, but not on the forms. It's usually the, you know, the scrotum that you see is what it was on the date that, you know, it was measured, and then you look back on what the birth date is to kind of figure out what, you know, what age he is and what scrotal size. And they are changing a lot from that, say 10 to 15 months of age, especially. They can be growing a couple centimeters a month. So it can make a big difference if you're trying to compare a 13-month to a 15-month-old bull, for instance. So, and again, I got no issue at all with any producers that want to own a tape and use it and measure it. They have a really good idea what's going on, and they know, they identify the problem ones early. It's an easy thing to teach somebody to do, and go from there. Couple of tricks on some that are super hard to do would be to you know, some we've just massaged, because that can be done. Some are kind of refractory to the electroejaculator, and I've even had a few big bulls that were super hard to stimulate, and we ended up, you know, they had to prove they were a good breeder, and we couldn't get a drop of semen out of them. I actually had them breed a cow, and I just actually went in and sucked out the vag semen, and they were all good breeders. Bred the cow in a you know, a few seconds really, and lots of good semen there. And noted that on the record. That's a super good thing to note. Like, this bull is kind of refractory to the electroejaculator. Maybe he's got to be done a different way. Good to know for the next year if he's going to be done again. Anyway, I think just kind of wrapping up with some pictures here. Again, just more on the equipment. Here's the white probe that you see now. They're coming weighted, and what I like about these is you can use a smaller probe on a bigger bull. So I guess maybe I'm getting a little lazier with age, or maybe I'm getting smarter or wiser. I don't know. But I find most of the herd sires, even 2-year-old bulls, yearlings, can be collected with that one small probe. I virtually never use a large probe, and occasionally we'll use the medium probe now, but I'm always going and they stimulate really well. So just good for you to know. A little bit on the forms, because this is about record keeping. I just want to spend a minute or so on these. This is the Western bovine form, and I just wrote a few things, on here that, the sex drive, the ability to mate. We've mentioned a couple times already. Physical soundness is done. The veterinarians palpate the internal organs. If there's a problem, it'll be indicated on there. And a problem may not be that they fail. It may just be that they're a little enlarged. Maybe it's something to watch. Scroll circumference, and then they always go if it's above or below average. And again, the defects down low there. We need at least greater than 70% normal to pass them. And the other probably good thing to note there is the little tick on protrusion or no protrusion. Sometimes some bulls will not protrude with the ejaculator, so it's a matter of watching them protrude. Some veterinarians will tranquilize them to see if they actually can protrude. There's a little difference in what goes on out there, but that's something to note as well. And on the back of that sheet is what's over on the right, which is the information for producers. So this is the form that you would get. This is the copy, the first 2 copies you would get, and as a purebred guy, you would pass, usually the original maybe on to the owner of the bull. You keep the second copy, the third copy is at the veterinary clinic, and that is a medical record that the veterinary clinics will keep for years, just like they do their other records. So if you lose it, something happens, you need to know about this bull. And you haven't, it's good to keep these year to year, because then you can follow your bull up and see if he's, maybe shrinking in testicle size or different things are happening. We can go back, but you also can get that copy from the veterinary clinic, like a photocopy, to check that out if you really need that. Keep in mind those records are around for quite a while. And this more or less just, I guess we don't have too many bulls like you see there sharpening his horns, because we're dehorned a lot, or all of them are dehorned except maybe with the Herefords, but they've got the, they curve them. So, but by the look of that bull's eyes, on most purebred guys I worked for, he would have been culled for temperament already. So that's another really good thing that I think happens. We rarely see a crazy bull anymore, just because the culling on the purebred farm, I think, is phenomenal. I think they really do a good job that way. Work with them, and they're just a far cry from what they were years ago in all the breeds, quite frankly. So it's good to keep that in mind. Yeah, and again, just showing that the measuring, and this is me doing it on a big Hereford bull. And this is actually a little bit in air. I slipped down a bit. In this bull, you can see he's you push the plunger and pull, it goes green and then red. Red means stop. This one would have measured at 41. I'm a little low on it. I probably discounted this bull a bit. He's probably a 42 or a 43. He just had such big testicles, they slipped up on me, and I took the picture anyway, so that's okay. Here's a little bit smaller bull showing probably the exact way to do it. They happen to have a bar in. This is from Dr. Atkins at the University of Calgary, but again, showing the reliable. He's right at 38. I can see there. Again, I could do this. Dr. Atkins can do this. One of you could do this. We're all going to get that 38, maybe 37 and a half to 38 and a half, but we're going to be pretty darn close if we all do it at a different time. So that's really good to know. Yeah, just collecting seam, nothing on this one. Again, can't state, and this is for the veterinarians, they're the value of the technicians. They speed up the work when we're doing this. They've got their role to play. We've got our role to play, and we can get the bulls through process and not sitting around too long. And then, the workload split up, bulls go through faster. I think it's better for the bulls, and I think it's better for the producer as well, that we're not tying them up all day to semen evaluate. And just a couple showing that what kind of we're looking at. Really concentrate on the one on the left, really 4 normal sperm and a real piriform head. The problem with the head defects is they potentially can still swim pretty well, and they could get to the egg and then render that a missed heat, essentially. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Other defects, like if you look at K down there, kind of a tightly coiled tail. If you saw that one trying to swim, it's flicking the tail and it's literally swimming in a circle. So to me, not as important a defect, because that thing is never going to get to the egg be ahead of the normal sperm. So the dead sperm where the head's been like kind of a decapitation, not an issue as well. I mean, we still count them as a defect, but if we get into the fine tuning of it, some defects are definitely worse than others. There's no question. Again, just showing different way to collect and the defects that I'm just going to finish off with here that we try to find for the I like to talk about these because they're, I guess, neat. Everybody likes these when we find them. It's kind of, we've done some good. These persistent frenulums are genetic. There's a hereditary aspect to them, but the neat thing is these will be noted on the semen form. And really, if you're a commercial breeder, this is not an issue because these are corrected. They're snipped. That ligament snip, they'll breed fine. There is no equivalent female component to this. The only thing would be if you were a purebred producer, you would not want to buy a purebred bull from another producer, maybe a higher genetics that was going to expand your thing that had a frenulum, because then you don't want a bunch of that showing up in your bulls that you're going to sell, because it's again, it's just more a little bit of work and stuff to do it. But the thing is, it renders him not, in my mind, not saleable to a purebred breeder. This one, and I did have a new purebred breeder years ago that I think he only had 8 bulls to collect. He was an Angus guy, just got started in the business, and he must have got one because he had 3 out of these 8 bulls. They were all related with frenulums on them. So that sort of supported my thing on the hereditary aspect. Normally in purebred outfits, I would say I see one of these maybe every 100 bulls or so, or maybe even less than that. Kind of depends, but we do see them occasionally. And this was just, it's out of focus. It was taken in 1999, but I was just going to nip it, but I got my finger in behind here so you could see it. It's the same thing. It's one of those frenulums. And we get some ugly warts, and ugly warts, sometimes these real ugly warts, people might argue, gee, do you want to save that bull? We will try surgery on them. A lot of them won't come back. Then we've got to make sure the bull has the ability to breed and all that other stuff, because sometimes we can render the nerves, damage the nerves at the end of the penis. So we've got to proceed with caution. I showed you 2 of probably the worst ones I've seen. Most of them are little warts that we'll take off, and then we'll recheck to make sure they haven't come back. And in my eyes, they're fine. They're good to go once we know everything's healed up. I think that was it. This slide I just put in because I semen collect and freeze as well. And this happened to be a rodeo bull, but just to show those with restraint and stuff, this guy got in. You can tell the look on his eye. He'd have me if he was out of that chute. Smart son of a gun, but he didn't do too much in the chute and just loaded up to beat the band. So once we get him restrained, pretty easy to collect a sample. This guy, I don't know, we put up 100 and some doses of semen out of him. So you can do it on these other different bulls. Just again, the handling, the facilities is probably the key point. And once the bulls are restrained half decent, they don't fight too much, and we can it's pretty easy to get a decent sample on most of them. So that's it, I think, Sydney. So yeah, and I always end with this old bronco-faced Hereford cross cow with frozen ears, a used up ear tag, and a question mark on her head as a question cow. So that's what I thought I'd throw tonight as well. I think I went a little bit over, but
yeah, that's totally okay. Doesn't look like Brian will be able to join us tonight, okay. So no problem at all. Thank you so much for that. It was very insightful. I really appreciate it. And I love the question slide. That's great. I'll just invite the audience. If you have any questions that have come up over the course of the presentation, please add them into the Q&A and we will definitely be able to get to them. But to kick us off, we had a funny one come in here. Blake wants to know if you got permission for the wart photo.
Yeah, that's I should have had him on there because that was his the one I'm pretty sure the one was his photo. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, now I thought it was just a cheeky little joke. Oh.
No, it's the truth. Yeah, no, him and I have shared some
Nice.
photos over the years. Absolutely.
Okay.
I always tease yeah, so that's Blake Baylog down south in Brooks, and veterinarian that does a lot of these too, and probably as even though he's way younger than me, is probably as qualified or better to give this presentation, but he's always the one doing it properly by having gloves and stuff on. That's what I will say about Blake.
All right. So my plan was to have Brian speak to like the practicalities of record keeping and stuff like that after a bull soundness evaluation and some of the challenges I would say in the East and stuff. So I'm going to ask you a couple of those record keeping questions.
Okay.
So how with the BSE form that producers receive, how would you use that annual one and past forms and results in order to make more informed reproductive decisions?
Well, I guess if it was up to me, and this usually comes up when we're doing a bull battery, next year, and one comes up and gee, I think his testicles are soft or whatever, and we'll pull out. What would be great is, this is maybe old school. A lot of these forms now do come online, so they could be online, on or not online, but on your computer, or they could be in a form of the record that I showed, in which they could be in a binder with the years even, and then you could just scroll back to the year before and see, oh, this bull measured 38. Yeah, I'll give you a real good example, Sydney, if I can. Probably a better one is an old herd sire that we kind of fought. He had poor morphology, and then it was still passable, but it was way less than what it had been. Like he'd been on 90% plus, and then he kind of got into that 70% plus, and then the next year we did him, he was even less, and I think his testicles had shrunk. That tells me he's on the way out and failing. So that would be, I think in the one case we said, look at this bull just barely passed. He passed really well 2 years ago, like he was top of the class essentially. Last year he was down a bit. This year he just barely passed. So this is probably I'd probably use him this year and ship him. It's kind of, so it might tell you an earlier time to be able to cull would be one thing. And even some of these oddball problems like the seminal vesicles that will state that they're a little bit enlarged or whatever. They may have all of a sudden flared up, and we knew he had a little bit of enlargement, but some of them do flared up. So that would be something to pinpoint them. On the flip side, we could have it that there's a bull that passed testicles a little bit, and then we come in the next year, because you can't. I think the producers think I remember their bulls year to year. I don't. It's just, you see so many bulls that you don't, and you say, well, this one's testicles are abnormal size, and okay, what do they measure? Because he'll remember that they were that way last year, and we'll look back. And I look at, I've even looked, this is more bison bulls, we'll look at places where they weigh them, like there's a scale on. So sometimes when there's a scale on, weigh the bull. Why not? If you can get a weight year to year, is this bull starting to go down in condition every year, maybe getting a little bit old and just not doing as well? That might be another reason to really have a look at him. And of course, his age. The age, everybody starts looking very hard, probably past 5, so 6 and up. But I mean, I've tested the odd, not many, but the odd 10-year-old bull that was very, very good. So obviously longevity was on his side. So all kinds of different ways I think you can use those records for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
I
I don't know if Blake is on the line. I mean, there's a guy there that he could probably answer that question really well too. So I don't know if you can do that, Sydney, but I invite him if he's got some answers to these to phone in. I'm surprised he wanted to listen to me.
Yeah, we have quite a few questions coming in. Every time we
Okay.
could circle back. But
Okay.
yeah, I really like that consideration. You said it in your presentation that you already have the bulls in the chute to do this. It gives you an opportunity to get other procedures done and even include them into the vaccination program, knowing that sometimes they can get missed out on that. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The purebred people, a little bit easier for them in a way because they're usually handling those bulls at multiple times. A lot of them that are sold now, at least in our area, are given a foot rot vaccine. So then that's kind of worked in by the purebred producer, and then the owner buying them after can carry on that if they want. And of course, foot rot would be really during the breeding season. Most of them are semen evaluating just before the breeding season, so a perfect time to do that. Or turnout vaccines, clostridial vaccines. Sometimes it's even late enough where fly control may be starting to be an issue. But I mean, all these things they're worth thinking about for sure, because otherwise they get back into the pen and then it's hard to do it.
Absolutely. So we have a few questions here. What is the youngest you would perform a BSE on a bull?
Very good question. To me, and I like them older, but we were pushed into this a little bit by the early sales. I think the line in the sand is super easy to draw right at 12 months, because I know that for a fact. When breeders will bring through their main bull battery, and all of a sudden I'll get one, he ain't reacting quite right, and I'll say, how young is this bull? And sure as heck he'll be 11 and a half months old. 12 and up seem to be better, but 13's better than 12, 14's better than 13, and 15 is quite a bit better. So yeah, ideally at least 12 months of age and older. I mean, I tried the odd one for a guy just because it was in there and it was a little bit younger, but most times it's not going to work. So hopefully that explains it. Even on the forms, a lot of times they'll have the percentage that fail when they're 12 months, 13, 14, and 15. And it gets, of course, substantially better the older they get.
Thanks, Roy. So when should a BSE be conducted in relativity to the breeding season?
Yeah, so I mean, we always say, and I really believe this isn't a cop out, but I mean the BSE is kind of good for that, I mean that period of time, but really kind of that day, that day that he's good, and weird things can happen. I think that we run into the dilemma of booking the veterinarian in to do it. And the commercial guys try to do it relatively close to turnout, just because, again, if there's been any problems in the winter, frostbite, fighting in the spring, before they go out, it's a good time to do it. Some do it a little bit earlier, and why they do this, and it's the managers that they want to know if a bull's no good so they can go buy another really good one. And they worry sometimes if you wait right till your breeding season, the sales are over. And sometimes that can be a problem. But timing wise, ideally right close to the breeding season is the best, so that that everything's good, at turnout type thing. If that makes sense. So what we're also seeing, I might expand that a little bit too, Sydney, if I may, that again, a lot of the good commercial producers that buy bulls, let's say they breed in May, but they're looking at these real early sales and getting some good bulls in there that are semen tested already. Let's say it's February. Well, you've got March, April, you've got at least 2 full months, and in some cases more than that if they don't breed till June. They'll throw that bull in with their battery and just semen test them again, just to make sure nothing has happened between when they bought them and when they do them themselves. And we do find some problems. I mean, it's a numbers game, not very often, but we do at times.
Thanks, Roy.
Yeah.
Our next question is, can a bull's body condition score affect semen quality?
Yeah, I think that sort of goes without saying. We still want them kind of like the cows, right? We want them in that, 2.5 to 3.5, but preferably 3 to 3.5. Body condition scores way too much, and that's always a worry. And we do see this with and it's no really fault of the owners, but sometimes the show bulls have to be got in better shape to try to win the shows, and they get a little too fat, and so too high a body condition leading to especially fat in the scrotum, and the neck of the scrotum can lead to overheating, poor temperature regulation in the testes, and poor quality semen. And the flip side, a too thin a bull, just poor nutrition, or maybe some underlying disease can lead to poor semen quality too. So you kind of want to keep them in that ideal, that sweet spot, just like we do the cows for calving and health that way, if that makes sense. So, I mean, some of them need when you get them, they sometimes need a diet for a little bit, and that's okay. But they still got to be on a rising plane of nutrition for breeding. So it's the same idea as the cow, kind of, really.
Thank you. We have a couple questions regarding semen sampling in younger bulls, so I'm just going to kind of group them together. So,
okay. Yeah.
So we have a question regarding the recommendations for young bulls showing up with high white blood cell count in the sample,
Okay.
as well as younger bulls showing up with like lower motility as well. And then, so if they're coming up with these problems as a younger bull or even potentially an older bull, what would you recommend the time be to retest them if this is a problem that could be remedied?
Okay. Yeah, those are super good questions, and of which I will attempt to give an answer, but it's probably not what happens in practice because we're sort of pushed into a little bit of different time frame. But yeah, the white blood cells, I mean, you will get the bulls will, and it doesn't have to be always in the seminal vesicles, but that's where I've seen it the most. These secondary sex glands that are inside in the pelvis will sometimes get infected, and you'll have pus exuded from them into the semen sample. And this is where the techs are really good too, because we will palpate these sometimes as veterinarians and know there's a problem, and in real bad ones, we can actually grab the seminal vesicles, and pus will come out the end of the penis, and those ones are usually toast. I mean, they're just way too infected, and there's not much you can do about those. But the minor ones won't see anything. I won't see anything in the sample, but the technician will see the white blood cells floating through the semen sample and then make us aware of it. If I guess they say a lot of those will heal or may just clear up on their own, and that's fine. So if we do them at an older age, they'll just be gone. I think most veterinarians are under the impression that it may be in the seminal vesicles or some of these others, and a shot of antibiotics, long acting ones. We usually use macrolides. There's a lot of Mycotils, Zactrans, Aprevo, Drax, and all those type of ones given. And I think we feel good about it because we're trying to do it now. They may clear up, and it had nothing to do with our antibiotics, or maybe it did, and they did clear up, because a lot of those will clear up. But I think we're looking at semen tests in them, definitely past 2 weeks, and probably even preferably 3 to 4 weeks later. The sales now are pretty early. The semen tests are done, and then there's a few that fail or have to be redone. So a lot of times we're looking at these a week later. That's really probably too quick, but veterinarians are kind of forced a little bit into a corner that way, because we're trying to really help the guy determine which are the good bulls and which aren't. So ideally it would be 2 weeks and older, but we're sometimes changes can happen in a week, but I don't think they preferably long to go in like a month later if it was me.
Thanks.
Okay.
So in the case of a young bull with low motility, is it likely that will be bumped up if
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So low motility is usually, dead sperm. So they're basically non-medical term in the veterinary world is a rusty load. It's basically just dead sperm that have been sitting there. In other words, the bull hasn't ejaculated. We'll get that same thing for different reasons. We'll get the same thing in matured bulls that are just laying around and not riding each other, not being active, and they'll just, when they get active, that fresh semen will come on. Young bulls, it's the fact that, again, they haven't been that active, they're not riding, they're kind of sexually still just reaching maturity, and so once they get active, and or again, even the act of the semen evaluation stimulates them to ejaculate, they got to produce more semen, and that will hopefully improve things. Now, again, every bull's different. Some produce a ton of dead semen their whole life, and others, the percentage live is very, very high their whole life. So there's enough individual variation there that can play into it as well. But most of the time, usage or stimulation, that sort of thing, will improve the motility, unless there is some problem with spermatogenesis.
Thanks. On the topic of the semen test, is hypermotility also a concern when you're looking at it, or not?
I've never been asked that question. I always think the faster the better. When I see them super motile, and you'll get those with the if there's any veterinarians on the line or experienced producers, they know exactly what I mean when we get a really good sample from a mature bull, put it on the slide, and you can see sort of a granular look to it. So it's thick and thin, and that semen is just buzzing. And I always think that's great. The more motile, the better. They're swimming. I always say they're trying to fertilize that egg that they can't find on the slide, but they're going there in a hurry. So that's good.
Yeah.
So that'd be a good question. And if anybody if there is something I'm missing there, I don't think I am, but I haven't heard that term before. So that's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb that I kind of heard, as long as they're going in the right direction, like
Yes.
you're pretty good.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're swirling, but yeah, they'll be mainly forward motility is what we're looking at. So the ones that are all bent tails and stuff really don't create a lot of fervor either, because they're just kind of pretty erratic in a circle, basically. So yeah, they're going nowhere fast.
Yeah. We have a question here. Can you discuss the heritability or nutrition impact of corkscrew claw defects in foot structure and the importance of tracking this on semen testing, if this is possible?
Yeah. Now I guess that's and the feet problems, and I kind of want to be super clear here. I think if we I think the breeders generally are really on top of any of these kind of foot defects. So a corkscrew claw, you'd see it at a fairly young age. You'd see it at least bilateral, those sorts of things. I don't want to get down the kind of rabbit hole too much of a foot defect that it might have hurt it or injured it, and you'll have a slight deviation, but not really a corkscrew. Because if you see that hereditary thing, those are the ones we want to eliminate. It's just like in the old days. If some of you can remember, there were certain lines of purebred bulls that had bad corns, and I mean those corns were super visible at maybe not a year, but getting into 2, like they were super visible. They were on both, sometimes all 4 legs, but for sure maybe 2 back legs. So there are 2 legs, horns, and you could kind of almost do a slam dunk. I think that's pretty hereditary, and let's eliminate that line. So I don't see a lot of that foot related stuff, but we're always looking for it. And there's usually a pretty big discussion, but I don't want to. That old hereditary thing is really sensitive with the purebred guys, and I get it. And so if it's, try to rule out it was that an injury or something that caused something on one claw, or are there two claws really corkscrewing, and we should look at the pedigree of this. Are there any other related ones? Who's the sire? That type of thing. So the purebred breeds, I think, have done a great job in that as well, because they've, they look at those things all the time, and I think things come and go, and we don't even realize it because they've realized there's an issue with something, and it's kind of eliminated, and we don't see it, which is great.
Absolutely. We have a question. So what would you consider too much in the case of frost scabs on testicles?
Yeah. It's too bad. I had some pictures of frost scabs, and I guess I'll go back to the experience that we happened a whole bunch of years ago. This was probably the late 80s, where we had this is in the Westlock area, had a huge, it went from way above zero, a rainstorm, and then to howling winds and a blizzard. And that year, that took out more herd sires than I think it has taken out in every year's put since. It was a perfect storm for freezing testicles, and they were wet. And it was interesting. We had a lot of people bring in bulls then, because that even ones that hadn't semen evaluated at that time thought, geez, I better get this guy checked out. And it was really interesting to me that some of them had quite a scab on them, and I'm thinking, this guy's toast. But he had the ability to regulate temp. He pulled up his testicles. The testicles were free moving, and we got pretty good semen out of them. And then others would have a skiff of frost on the bottom. And I'm talking these bad ones, couple centimeters across the bottom, and you think there's no way they're going to be okay. And they were, and others that had half the amount were taken out. So I think if you see any amount, you're concerned. A lot of them nowadays, again, the owners bed them pretty well. Porosity fences. I don't see much of that. All I see is little scarring, a little bit here and there from frozen, manure gets stuck on the scrotum, and then it freezes and causes a little bit of a scab, but not a real damage to the testicle. So don't see near as much as I used to. And they are a little bit unpredictable, but be cautious every time you see any, for sure.
Right. Thank you. So we are just past 8 o'clock. So I'm going to ask one last question, and then we'll wrap up here.
Okay.
So what are some options for producers or vets who do not have access to large animal handling facilities, besides blocking them in with a tractor and some panels?
You're going to remember that slide, aren't you, Sydney?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. I'm, and I can go back to kind of what we did. And Alberta, I know, a lot different than the East, and that's the issue now. In Alberta, there's several clinics, and I could name a bunch here and there that are actually set up quite well to do mature bulls in clinic. So the guys with a low, smaller bull battery, and by that, my sort of rule of thumb is, well, if they don't fight much and you can bring a trailer load in, that's good. But I really don't want you hauling bulls in and out all day. I don't think you should have to do that. You probably have a pretty good facility or a big alleyway on farm. If you don't have that, then I would look at that, the haul into the auction market idea. Find a veterinarian. I know in Ontario, there's some guys do good work out there. I know they're spread a little farm few between, because there's lots of really good veterinarians that do lots with dairy out there, but not as familiar with the beef cattle or for sure the semen evaluation, where you might have to haul them a little ways, or you could even get, again, a producer that's got a really good setup and invite a veterinarian maybe from a ways away for a day of semen evaluating. That's kind of what I see. You work together, you have a good facility, places where you can pen them, and they can be, divided individually so they don't get fighting. There's everything in Alberta from a veterinarian I know that has really good facilities, hydraulic chute, and a whole bunch of pens outside. And he has a day of the week that they specifically test, and everybody hauls into that clinic on those days, and even just leaves the bulls there and picks them up later. They're not even dealing with handling them too much, because that's the way he does it. There's one clinic being built in the north that is specifically doing it for bulls and that sort of thing. So the bull handling and the clinics I know in Alberta, that's a lot of what's hauled in now. I mean, in the old days, it used to be the calvings and that sort of thing, but we've minimized them quite a bit. So now it's the haul-in facility. But if there isn't any, I would look at the auction markets or places like that I bet you they'd be happy to entertain that, because it's sort of business coming in. When we did it before, we paid the auction market so much a bull that we brought in that it was part of our fee, and everybody seemed happy with it, and it went very efficiently. It was safe, and you got a little camaraderie of the producers talking to one another too, bragging how good their bulls are, right? It's always fun. So that's some things they could maybe do.
Okay, thank you. I know
Okay.
Brian has a really good anecdote of how he used to bring it to the local feedlot that was only like 15 miles from him.
Beautiful.
And a bunch of them and neighbors would bring them and make a day out of it, basically, because there was a handling facility there.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
there's
And
always
they're usually happy to accommodate you. And then once you use them, you realize maybe that handling facility, you could have one, or, I mean, it costs money, but the hydraulic chutes, I don't know how much time and effort they save on both sides, for the veterinarian, the producer, everything. So I'm a real proponent of them. And, but I realize the situation's a little different down east. So that's what I would, that's a great idea on the feedlot thing. We talk a fair bit about biosecurity, but again, there's no such thing as a closed herd. And if they're vaccinated, they're in and out. I mean, I used to tell the producers, well, how often do you clean your, pens out? Well, and they'd say once a year, clean them out really well. I said, well, the auction market, they scrape their pens every week. So it's like, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with what they do and how they do it. And they're in and out pretty quick, and they're safe, and they're not going to hurt themselves, or it's safe for the operator and the veterinarian. You gotta look after your veterinarian too.
Yeah, we only have so many of them. Gotta keep them safe.
Yeah.